Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
Okay, everybody, this week's big question is about what does your inner voice or monologue or internal dialogue sound like, or do you actually have one? Because apparently some people don't, or don't have the ability to have an internal monologue or dialogue. We can also touch on something called aphantasia, which is the inability to form pictures, mental images in your mind. Some people also don't have that ability. Anyway, so yeah, the voices in my head, or the internal dialogue or monologue. Yes, I do have this. I talk to myself in my head all the time, I think. I ask myself questions, sometimes to solve a problem. And I try and have a sort of a dialogue about, well, if I connected this to that, how come that doesn't work? Oh, because that is not connected to that, and that helps connect to this. Stuff like that. I also, sometimes my inner dialogue or monologue is either rehearsing or replaying a conversation I might have had with somebody. Sometimes it's an argument. And it's always the case where you think about maybe past disagreements with somebody, and you think to yourself, if I only said that, that would solve the problem. That would have done it. Also, sometimes in my mind, I work through like a to-do list. Like if I'm doing chores around the house, I might talk to myself, okay, so after I do the laundry, I have to take care of this, 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 and this. And it just helps me keep track of where things are going on outside my head. And I don't know if this is related or not. I mean, everybody knows the concept of the earworm when you think of a song and you just can't get it out of your head. That's kind of a problem sometimes. Although I'll mention my earworm solution is whatever weird song is stuck in your head, I always think of a Lowrider by War, and that gets rid of the bad song, and I don't have a problem with Lowrider being in my head.
Or Cowbell.
Yeah. Maybe tangentially related to all this would be talking to yourself, which is completely normal, they say. I do it too. It can help me focus on something that I'm trying to do or whatever. It can motivate me. It's like, come on, get your shit together, that kind of thing. Often when I talk to myself, it will involve me cursing at inanimate objects because they're not doing what I want them to do in quickly or a quick enough manner. So it's like, get in there now, you stupid thing. So those are the voices in my head. I have plenty of voices in my head, but they're all mine. I'm not schizophrenic or anything. So that's my answer.
Well, what about the Tsar's youngest daughter, Aphantasia?
Who's?
The Tsar's youngest daughter, Aphantasia, the woman who was killed by the Bolsheviks. And your question, you talked about aphantasia, where you can't imagine an object.
Oh, okay. Oh, a picture in your mind? Okay, yeah. I mean, I can visualize pictures in my mind. In fact, sometimes I can visualize artworks almost completely the way I want them to look before I actually maybe do them. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, I was just imagining the late Nancy Walker on the back of a rhinoceros sporting a flamethrower. I debate with myself. I'm not very spontaneous. I'm not, what kind of word am I looking for? I actually wrote it down too. I'm not very impulsive. If I'm going to do something, I've thought it over and I've talked to myself, or I've written it down about 100 times. And so I'm like, if I'm headed to the store, I'm like, okay, excuse me, I need tea. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'll go here, and I'll do that. And after I do this, I'll do that. So I have a running list in my head. And the other thing is, I'm often like, I'll start talking out loud to myself. And I'm like Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof. I'm like, well, on this hand, we have on this, and I'll actually weigh stuff out loud. And if worst is, if I'm out walking around, I don't have time to write anything down, and I've got song lyrics in my head, because now I've got to try them out. And in the case of a song like God Wrote Come Junkie, and you're talking to yourself, like, God wrote Come Junkie. Oh, yeah. Like everybody's looking at you. But yeah, I do it. I have a very noisy mind and I talk a lot. Now at this point, if you talk a lot, there's always the person who goes, still water runs deep. But if you've ever talked to somebody who's basically silent a lot, you realize that they're not talking because they don't have a lot to say. They're all like Sling Blade. They're all like, what do you think about it? I like that potted meat. So it's okay to be verbose and stuff. But actually, and people are going to probably roast me in the comments, but I don't care. First of all, I think it's nice that some of you will let go of your dad's dicks long enough to actually give us your thoughts. But I've been like meditating for months now, and the idea was to slow down my thoughts, my speed fire. And I don't yell out loud at inanimate objects. I'm much calmer in that sense. It's given me a sense of calm. But I tell you, the thoughts up here just get weirder and weirder and weirder. So, and I believe it is pronounced apophasia. Is that how you pronounce it, Dean?
I pronounce it. Yeah, I think it's apophasia. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we'll just say that.
Aphantasia? I think
Aphantasia.
The Tsar's oldest daughter. It was the Tsar's oldest daughter, and the Bolsheviks killed her. They didn't know what happened to her for years, and they found her finger. But for years, I didn't know that people couldn't imagine something, because I can imagine all sorts of stuff. And I didn't know until I was actually in college. I was explaining how to visualize a 3D cube, like a hypercube, in a fourth dimension. I was explaining how, the whole flat world thing, how if you lived on a two-dimensional plane, somebody dropped in, they appear out of nowhere. And I was explaining to somebody how, all right, you just take that extended 3D and you'd extend it into another plane you can't see. And this guy was like, well, I can't imagine that. And he explained to me that unless he was shown something, he couldn't do it. And he was also talking about drawing. He couldn't draw something unless it was in front of him. And he had this really weird way of doing stuff like that. He would sort of logically break down. If you told him, draw a cat, he would think, well, a cat has two triangular pointy ears. So he'd look like a triangle, and he'd kind of look at that and start that. And I was fascinated. I met like 2 or 3 people since then that had that, but yeah, it's really, really rare. But I cannot imagine, makes sense, life without aphantasia. I guess they can't either, but I just cannot imagine not being able to think of something in your head. And I'm really glad also, Dean, that your son doesn't have it, because that would mean that awesome drawing that he did, that would mean he had to do that for real life. I mean, that thing has to exist. The thing you wanted to get as a tattoo. And if that's out there, I'm scared. So yeah, I'm going to go back now to imagining the 4 of us as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Spoiler alert, Joe is famine. Joey off.
Yeah, I have an inner dialogue and a voice. I mean, I remember hearing a voice in my head since early childhood, one of the earliest memories I can have. Interestingly, I don't know, it used to be a woman's voice, and sometimes at some point and I thought of it as my conscious, I guess, the Jiminy Cricket kind of thing. And I guess some point in time, it became me talking to me, and there was a dialogue that started going on, and it can be extremely critical of things I do.
Do you think when it was a woman's voice, was it when you were young? Do you think it might have been sort of like a version of your mother's voice or something?
Something like that. It could have been, but it wasn't her voice.
I like to think it was Carol Channing. I like to imagine his inner voice is Carol Channing. We're ready for Broadway, Joe. That's how I am.
Yeah.
I can picture that in my mind, but anyway.
So yeah, I am thinking things through. Like, I can't imagine people not doing that. So I remember you saying this at one of our rehearsals, Dean, that there are people that don't have an inner voice, and that kind of blew my mind. And I did meet somebody on tour who claimed he didn't have an inner voice, but he came up to me after one of my solo shows and said, So he was looking at the art I was selling after the show, my little marker drawings and stuff that I would do. And he said, so you think in pictures too, just like me, I can tell. And I'm like, I don't know what you mean. You think, and he told me that he doesn't, I said, no, I think in words. And he said, I don't think in words. I only think in images. And that kind of also blew my mind. So
did you ask if he had a woman in his head? I mean, just, because you're there, you might as well look into that.
And yeah, also I think music sometimes, and just like people who have earworms. And I used, when I was going through adolescence, if I got one of those erections that I didn't know why it would happen, like in school or something, and for some reason I was so self-conscious, I thought everybody could tell. I would just think, smile, little smile for me, Rosemary, in my head, and it would go away instantly.
I'm going to need an extra round of meditation tonight.
It worked. I don't know. It works to this day.
Do you talk out loud to yourself as well?
I never had. I'm maybe when I'm asleep. I don't know. I never talk out loud to myself. No, I just have the conversations in my head.
I saw you do it once.
I did.
Yeah, remember Bubba? Yeah, out of nowhere, you just went Bubba. I've witnessed something glorious.
Okay, then I did.
I remember to this day because that was the one cat's name was Bubba, and it just came home like, wow, you were tired though. You were super tired.
Sometimes it's nice to get the chatter to stop, and it's never lonely.
You are wrecking my calm.
And yeah, I visualize things. I can see pictures. I can visualize something before I draw it. I mean, I can't imagine not doing that. So I don't know. I'm never thought.
I liked your Barnabas Collins drawing.
I never thought of it. Thanks. Tara wanted me to draw that, so I did.
Well, I think I have a photographic memory because so many times in my life, like I've had something that I saw in a book or something, and like especially in school, I could be like, oh, I remember the answer is that. So I've always thought that I had that, but everything you guys are saying, I'm kind of like, oh, when I go to draw something, like I just either improvise or like I have to see it and do a version of it there. Like I can picture a cat in my head, but I can't, not long enough to be able to open my eyes and like do it and remember, which seems it seems like I just contradicted myself because I have this like photographic memory or whatever. But I had never heard of this until you asked the question, Dean, and I was like, I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, it's definitely not me. But some of the things I read and what you guys have been saying, I'm like, I wonder if I have that. I don't know. I'm gonna have to explore that further. I definitely have inner monologue, and maybe even plural. I don't drink so much anymore, but I used to a lot and do stupid stuff. So there was a voice that would be like, hey, you should do this stupid thing. And I'd be like, yeah, sounds great. So instead of doing that kind of stuff anymore, all my life I've had music constantly going through my head. It's either a loop of something. It could be a short loop. It could be a long loop. It could be almost an entire song. It could be my own stuff. And like Rodney, what you were saying, when you're frustrated and you got lyrics and you can't write them down, constantly coming up with a song or parts of a song in my head, and I have no way to do anything with it. I want to invent the car keyboard where you have like installed into your dashboard just a little like one octave thing where you can just
while you're driving.
Yeah, or in traffic. Not literally while you're driving. I also had the stupid idea of having windshields become like a movie screen too. So like when you're not driving, you could watch something. But then I thought too many irresponsible people would probably turn on a movie in the middle of a long drive. Like, I want to watch something. What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, this is a fun topic for me because I battle my inner monologue a lot. I was actually just talking to Chrissy about it, how like sometimes I have to like be nice to it instead of shaming it for making me think stupid stuff.
Or is it, I mean, is it critical of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of like, it kind of either interferes or drives most situations for me. So
Self-criticism is hard, and you got to work
yeah,
on
it's really bad self-criticism or judgment.
turning that around.
Is your inner dialogue a dude? Because I'm still stuck on Joe's thing.
Speaking of Joe's
No, because I have a thought here. No,
speaking of Joe's thing,
Yeah.
I had a song for that too. It was the Laverne and Shirley theme.
for that. No, because I'm thinking if your inner monologue is critical of you, just picture it in like a really silly voice, like a high pitch, like some sort of like a Pete Bridgman, like, oh, you'll never be able to do that. You can't accomplish anything. You're like, oh yeah, right. You slap it away. Yeah.
Well, I think what it does is it brings up relevant example, or what it seems are relevant examples from the past of where I've fucked something up, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I did, and it's like, oh wait, no, I got to give myself the chance to try this again. So I'm trying to go from hating that voice to like being like, you're just trying to protect me, and you know, or maybe I should go back to drinking where I just do stupid shit. And I already covered the Aphantasia thing.
You're talking out loud to yourself?
I do that when I'm in the car and stuff, alone. That I don't know. Well, it's funny. I've looked back at my work history, and a lot of jobs that I've had, I work alone or like do the majority of the work by myself. Especially the last job at the church, like I was constantly talking to myself, and I actually found that to be helpful to kind of drown out that negative part. Like I was working with this inner monologue to be like, okay, we've got this, and like Dean, what you were saying, I've got this task, I've got this, which one should I do first? So yeah, keeping it engaged, I think, is important.
Do you think now, because everybody's been working from home for a year and a half, and a lot of people have been talking to themselves, my friend Sean and I were discussing this, a lot of people have been talking to themselves at home. The minute people get back at work and something goes wrong, it's going to be, oh, you filthy puppy fucker. Oh, you goddamn puppy fucker. Because people don't have the filter when you're home alone. And that's why I started doing the meditation thing. So I wouldn't go to work and call, my mouse a puppy fucker.
Well, I miss having to wear, well, I don't really miss having to wear a mask everywhere. You still have to wear them some places, but I was constantly talking to myself with a mask on, and nobody could tell. At least, I don't think so. Yeah, like going to the grocery store. Well, that's already hard enough. I got to talk to myself just to make it through the store.
I had to run. There was a birthday party for a friend of mine Saturday, so I had to run to the grocery store to get. They didn't have mustard and ketchup or stuff, so I ran over to the grocery store. It's the one where they hanged H.H. Holmes, and I now know everything about the wedding of the cashier's brother, because there were the people he knew in line. And how did that went? Do you like your new sister-in-law? Like, I just got two goddamn things to get. I'm still angry about that. Sorry, so that's my inner dialogue, is just cursing that guy out.
Yeah, I've tried meditating, and I can kind of get to a comfortable point meditating, but there's literally constantly some kind of music or sound in my head.
Yeah, same here, but don't worry about it. You just keep coming back.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say, as long as I can be aware of that and come back to trying the mindfulness and to just rest it. I haven't gotten there yet, but it's good to just keep.
Yeah, don't think of it as a goal. You're just there just to kind of, it's not, there's no end goal. It's the problem with Western society is we've got everybody thinking, oh, you've got to be a winner. You've got to be the best at this and that. Just do it for the heck of doing it. And just see, it just, you can slow it down. You can get, I'll be concentrating on my breathing, and then all of a sudden the thought will pop up, and I don't judge the thought. I just kind of let it flow away. And then I go back and I constantly get interrupted because I have a noisy head. Obviously, if I was one of the quiet sling blade people, I'd be really good at this. But there's a great saying, which is enlightenment is a space between thoughts. That if you don't give yourself a little space, I was just cramming my head constantly with thoughts. And now that I'm doing that, I find myself, I'm being a lot more creative. I'm pumping out songs left and right. So I normally I would make fun of it, but this was actually suggested to me by some old punk rockers who were doing it. So,
yeah.
This week, I am going to recommend another band from the sort of post-Brexit, post-punk world. There's a lot of new bands in that arena. And this band is from Leeds, and they are called Yard Act. And it's sort of angular, interesting, noisy stuff with a lot of words and stories and characters. I'll leave it up to you to determine if you like it or not. There's some videos of live performances out there. They played in a studio in London last December, I guess to an audience of just the film crew. And there's some online stuff that you can watch. But their stuff is available on all these streaming platforms. They have an EP out, and they're going to have an album out later this year. Two songs that I recommend are, one is called Fixer Upper, and the other is called Dark Days. And we'll provide links, and you can hear that stuff. So that's my recommendation this week.
I'm going to continue my trend of recommending a movie and an album, and this time they're linked. Woo! The movie is called The Power, came out this year, 2021. It takes place in 1974 in a London hospital during when they would have the power cuts because of the miners' strike. So it's a hospital that has to go dark. It's a woman's first night there at working as a nurse. It's kind of a mixture of Turn of the Screw with The Shining. You can think of it as that. It's good. I give it like a solid B. So if you're up late at night and you're like, oh, I want to just watch a well-acted, well-directed horror movie that kind of doesn't quite make it to home plate in the last slide there. That was kind of I get less angry at a shitty film because I can turn it off 2 minutes into it. And so something's really good and I get up right to the end. I'm like, but it's really worth watching it. I think I wanted to like it more than I did because of the soundtrack. The soundtrack is by Gazelle Twin, and I'm going to get his name here. It's Max D. Wardner. I've been a big cheerleader for Gazelle Twin for years now. The Gazelle Twin album, Pastoral, was my favorite album of 2018. It is nightmare material. It is basically, you're talking about Leeds in Britain. It's the story of someone who moves from London sort of into the countryside thinking, oh, these people are going to be pleasant, and they are not. They are. It's like visiting central Pennsylvania, but with English accents. It is a very scary, very disturbing album. But again, Gazelle Twin has that disturbing side. I always say Gazelle Twin is a project that is like a fast, angry, loud project that isn't fast, angry, or loud. There's a lot of space there. And the soundtrack album is fantastic. It's all, I think the longest song is 3 minutes, so you can put it on. It's these great little snippets. It doesn't really work as ambient music because it will engage you, and it is very, very, very well done. But I was super happy to see a band I like get something nice, to get like a soundtrack. And then as I was watching the movie, I went to move a copy of the latest copy of Electronic Sound. And in here is a story about Gazelle Twin. Gazelle Twin's been working with Nyx, which is that drone choir. They've got a new album called Deep England. So I'm going to check that out. Haven't checked it out yet, but I imagine it's going to be fantastic. So I'm very happy. I'm always happy when somebody I like gets something like, even if they're mentioned, Rolling Stone just mentioned Ganser. And it's so much fun to watch Rolling Stone struggle with something that isn't Bruce Springsteen or Dave Grohl. They don't know what to do with it. And they described him as like an alt rock band. And I'm like, yeah, that's right, Rolling Stone. Pretty much indistinguishable from Tune Yards. When I think of Ganser and Tune Yards, I think of them the same. So but again, please people, this is a sign from the gods. All right. So we have to, if you haven't checked out Gazelle Twin, please check out Gazelle Twin. The movie's pretty good, but what really makes that movie is that Gazelle Twin soundtrack. In fact, I think our very first Big Questions was about new movie soundtracks. So I'm a big fan. I had Mindhunter, the first one on today, the one from the 80s where it's got my favorite band's Shriekback on the soundtrack. And then it goes all the way to the end with this great Shriekback soundtrack. And then the last song is like this weird, like they got somebody else to come and do this upbeat 80s song. It's like beat, beat, beat of my heart. And I'm like, I'm going to find who's responsible and I'm going to beat them to death with my shoe. Okay, sorry about the tangent there, but fired up.
I have one recommendation for this week, and it's a film from 2017 called Loving Vincent. And it's animated in the form of oil paintings in the style of Vincent van Gogh. And it's about Vincent van Gogh, or at least it's about the final days of his life as told from the point of view of the son of a postman who is trying to deliver the last undelivered letter that Vincent van Gogh wrote to his brother, Theodore. And it's pretty interesting and visually exciting to see.
That's been on my to-see list forever. I've really got to get around to seeing that one.
What's the animation style like?
Oil painting, and
But I mean, like they
pretty
actually
cool.
did oil paintings. Like,
I read that it was like it's a version of rotos where they actually rotoscoping where the actors acted out so they can block it and frame it. But then instead of a normal animation, they had like 125 or so oil painters who could paint in the Van Gogh style.
Wow.
Do it.
Yeah,
So you see-
it involves a girl from Kansas landing in a new land, and she's going through the woods, and she finds Vincent van Gogh, and he's all stiff. And he goes, oil painting, oil painting. No, I got confused with something else. Sorry, I'm an idiot.
No, that's not the same movie I saw.
Is it a full-length feature film or is it a short?
It's a full length.
Wow.
Somewhere there's a short version of it. Because I think I read that it was in 2008 they did a short. It was a Kickstarter sort of project, but
When you link to the trailer,
I don't-
then-
I don't really have much of a recommendation other than remembering recently that, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks or a month ago, my recommendation was to if anybody out there chews their skin or like picks their skin around their nails or whatever, to not do that. I don't know what is going on. I don't know if somebody out there or one of you guys delivered some positive mental energy or something, but I have literally not done it since then. And I have been doing this most, if not all of my adult life, and I'm not doing it anymore. And I want to knock on wood or thank whoever was trying to help me out there, if anyone. Or maybe it was my inner
well,
I
that's
don't
great.
know, maybe the accountability I have to anybody that watched, like it inspired me to. So I would recommend if you want to stop doing something, talk about it with people.
oh yeah.
I would knock on wood, but I've got Joe's anti-erection song.
I know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Shamil, Shamazel. All right, I'm good.
Kill me.
Ooh.
What's the use in crying? In a while we'll see. Rosemary.